Imagine this, one single city standing tall against the most powerful army in the world. A city that was once a symbol of industry and life suddenly turned into a hell of fire, smoke and ruins. A graveyard for invaders who believed they could never be defeated. You might wonder, how could one city change the course of an entire world war? The answer is that Stalingrad was not just a battle. It was a test of willpower, endurance, and the very limits of what the human spirit can endure. Welcome back. In this part, we continue together the story of one of the greatest battles in history, the Battle of Stalingrad. If you haven't watched the first part yet, I recommend starting there because the events are deeply connected and you'll understand how things led up to the decisive moment we're talking about today. Now, let's dive together into the next chapter of this legendary war. The strategic importance of Stalingrad. Stalingrad was far from being an ordinary city during World War II. It was one of the most important cities in the southwestern Soviet Union. Imagine a city located on the banks of the Volga River, home to around 500,000 people, and at the same time serving as a massive river port that supplied the entire nation. The area surrounding the city was considered the true breadbasket of the Soviet Union, producing the essential grains upon which people relied. And as for the Volga River itself, it was like a lifeline transporting iron, oil, coal, and even manganese ore from north to south. In short, Stalingrad was not just a city, it was a transportation hub and an economic powerhouse that the Soviets could never afford to lose. Beyond its geographical and economic importance, the defense of Stalingrad played a crucial role in mobilizing the entire Soviet Union through a massive propaganda campaign. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin famously declared,
"There will be no Stalingrad. The border is here. We will not give up an inch of soil to the German invader."
During Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union launched in the summer of 1941. The Germans initially advanced rapidly, covering about 35 kilometers per day during the first 4 months. However, as the Wehrmacht approached Stalingrad, the advance slowed dramatically. The Battle of Stalingrad, August 23, 1942, February 2, 1943, was one of the most brutal and devastating confrontations of World War II. The battle pitted Nazi Germany and its allies against the Soviet Union for control of the city of Stalingrad in southern Russia. Just imagine the scale of destruction. This battle is considered one of the bloodiest in human history, with nearly 2 million people killed or wounded. In the end, after a long siege and horrifying street battles, the encircled German army under Friedrich Paulus collapsed. The result? Over 91,000 German soldiers were captured, a shocking blow to the supposedly invincible Nazi army. The battle marked the end of Germany's advances into Eastern Europe and Russia, and became its first major defeat in World War II, shattering the morale of the German forces. Adolf Hitler had grand ambitions for the city that bore the name of the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin. The German offensive began as a joint effort by the 6th Army and the 4th Panzer Army, aimed at advancing through the oil-rich Caucasus. The expected oil from Russia was meant to sustain Germany's ability to conduct large-scale operations, especially since its own supplies were limited. June 22, 1941, Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, begins. August 1942, the German 6th Army is ordered to seize Stalingrad. August 23, 1942, intense fighting erupts in the city. November 19, 1942, the Soviets launch a counter-offensive northwest of Stalingrad, cutting the 6th Army's supply lines. November 23, 1942, the 6th Army receives orders to to break out. A second attempt begins on December 12th, but is abandoned on December 18th, January 27th, 1943. The German forces remain surrounded and attempt to escape. January 31st, 1943, the commander of the 6th Army surrenders and 91,000 soldiers are taken prisoner. February 2nd, 1943, the last German troops in the city surrender, marking the end of the battle. General Friedrich Paulus led the German army in Operation Blue, a plan designed to capture the industrial city of Stalingrad on the Volga River due to its vital importance in oil and supply routes toward the Caucasus. Initially, the Germans achieved rapid progress, capturing about 90% of the city. However, a fierce resistance led by Vasily Chuikov, commander of the Soviet 62nd Army, successfully halted the German advance. Soviet partisan activity within Stalingrad, along with the establishment of the Don Front, played a major role in disrupting German logistics and military planning. Note, some English sources mistakenly list the dates as 1972-1973, but the correct historical period is 1942-1943, and this has been corrected accordingly. Now imagine being in a city bombed day and night, where every street turned into a battleground over a single building or even a single room. What would you do? That was Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad was not an ordinary military clash, it was a test of endurance and willpower. Historians today consider it a true school of military strategy and human resilience. Reasons: the Germans wanted to capture Stalingrad because it was the industrial heart of the Soviet Union and the key to controlling the Volga River, the vital supply artery. For Stalin, the city was not just an industrial center, it was a symbol carrying his own name. How could Stalin's city be allowed to fall? A defeat there would have crushed Soviet morale entirely. Tactics: the Germans relied on a scorched earth policy and intense aerial bombing that turned Stalingrad into rubble. Ironically, that very destruction helped the Soviets, as the debris made tank movements difficult for the Germans. The Soviets used what became known as house-to-house fighting. They hid among the ruins, launching surprise attacks that drove the Germans to exhaustion. Picture a Soviet soldier hiding behind a half-destroyed wall, letting a tank pass by, then destroying it from behind. Results: although the Germans initially controlled about 90% of the city, Soviet resistance eventually turned the tide. Both sides suffered horrific human and material losses, but the surrender of the German 6th Army marked a major turning point in World War II. You might ask, what can we learn from all this? The lesson is that wars are not always decided by brute force or technology. Sometimes morale and the determination to endure can completely change the course of history. Now focus with me. Senior German commanders believed that Stalingrad was an ideal area for practicing what they called mobile warfare. Imagine being a commander trying to control an open region between two rivers with little threat from counterattacks. That's a dream scenario for any strategist. The Wehrmacht had superior equipment and capabilities for such operations, and they believed controlling this area would allow them to move quickly and strike Soviet strongholds before defenses could be organized. But reality on the battlefield was far different from plans on paper. As happened later in Stalingrad, even the best strategies collapse when facing people fighting for their homes and survival. And that's what made battle unforgettable in military history. Additionally, the German Luftwaffe's air support for tank assaults provided the German forces with major advantages in timing and concentration of attacks, making it very difficult for the Soviets to respond effectively. Stalin called for the defense of key industrial cities through propaganda that emphasized their vital importance to the Soviet Union. Thus, the Battle of Stalingrad gained immense military and political significance for both Nazi and Soviet leaderships. Stalin personally ordered the defense of the city to the last man, a command given even before the German forces became encircled. Now listen carefully. The German offensive on Stalingrad was not merely about capturing one city, it was part of a broader plan to seize the entire Caucasus region. Why this specific area? Because of its strategic and economic value. First objective, destroy the Soviet southern front and eliminate any potential threats from the south. Second objective, secure a defensive line along the eastern bank of the Volga River, allowing the Germans to prepare for any future Soviet counterattacks. Imagine having a solid defensive barrier along a massive river. It would give any commander immense confidence in battle. Third objective, establish a launching base for future offensives towards Central and Northern Asia. Controlling Stalingrad was the key to expanding further into the region. On August 19, 1942, Hitler ordered the last major assault on the city, but the Soviet 62nd and 64th armies firmly halted the attack by September 9th. From that point on, the German 6th Army was locked in brutal close-quarters combat within the city, real street fighting with no room for maneuvering, turning the battle into one of the harshest in history. You might wonder, how could a smaller force withstand such a powerful army? Here lies the answer. The answers. In the leadership of the Soviet commanders and the determination of ordinary citizens who turned the battle into a living example of resilience and intelligent strategy. And now, don't forget to read the practical lesson learned from today's story. It's waiting for you on our blog. The blog link is in the description. Go now and discover the important lessons you can apply in your life. If you liked the video, don't forget to support me with a like and subscribe to the channel so you'll get the newest episodes of the Stalingrad battle series as soon as they're released. The story isn't over yet. There are still many thrilling chapters waiting for you. So stay tuned because the best is yet to come.